In the last few days, we have been hearing stories that Mike Tyson, at 53 years old, Mike Tyson may be considering a return to the boxing ring. What does this say about the sport? What does this say about Mike Tyson? Is this something anybody wants to see? Let's dive down that rabbit hole. Mike Tyson, Iron Mike Tyson, once upon a time. I don't know if that headline still stands, but Mike Tyson is now only 12 years away from being a senior citizen. And yet he is talking, apparently seriously, there's video to back it up, of coming back into the boxing ring. Maybe for charity, maybe for fun, maybe because he has something to prove in his mind, whatever. Rick Zamford, is this something that anybody really wants to see?
Yes, definitely. 1,000,000% we want to see Mike Tyson back in the ring, whether it's an exhibition, charity, 12 rounds with Evander Holyfield again so he can bite his ears. Quote, "The gods of war have reawakened me, ignited my ego, and want me to go to war again." That is Mike Tyson in a nutshell, and saying that he's back. He looked good in the ring, although he was sparring for, 10 seconds, 20 seconds? Can he last 3 rounds again? Regardless, we will watch, and we want to watch, because there's nothing to watch right now, so give us some Mike Tyson.
Steve?
Well, don't give me it, but that said, I'll watch it when it happens. But for the very reason that Rick said, is that because not a bunch on, and there's a curiosity thing. And I have to confess, and this happens to me a bit in football too, with all the CTE stuff and with what we know, I've always, in the last few years, particularly in the heavyweight division, as much as I like a good bout, I feel a little funny about it just because of that. And you kind of wonder if, they're going to they better wear headsets, right? I mean, I can't imagine them allowing him to take any kind of head punch to the head. So I think it'd be a curiosity item on many, many different levels, not least of which would be the car crash element.
Bubby, you'd buy, right? You'd buy a pay-per-view for this if it was on?
No, because I'll tell you this, I'm one of the few people, I used to travel across the border. I heard about Iron Mike Tyson very, very early in his career, and I would say about his 5th or 6th bout, which used to be carried on the USA Network, if you remember that network back in the day. I used to travel across the border, me and my friends, big boxing fans, and we would watch him. So I saw him fight from about fight 6 on, and he was spectacular. Remember, he was the youngest heavyweight champion at 19 years old, beating Trevor Berbick for his first belt. I also saw his last fight, which was against the Irish heavyweight champion, McNeely. Right. Peter McNeely, if you remember that.
Really?
And the fight needed to be stopped after 6 rounds because Tyson could not give up anymore. And I'll always remember this. I had to go back on YouTube because I needed to get the exact words. In his interview with the old famous Jim Gray, he said, "I'm not going to disrespect the sport by losing to the caliber of these figures. I'm not an animal. I just don't have that ferociousness." You're going to tell me at 53 years old that he is going to find this ferociousness all over again, that we could see, that we see what we possibly saw when he was 18, 19 years ago? At any cost, 45, 50, $100, I don't need to see this, even if it's an exhibition. This is as crazy and as asinine as what we saw in 1975 when George Foreman fought 5 guys in the same night at old Maple Leaf Gardens. This is ridiculous. We don't need to see this.
But in 1975, he did, but he won them all. He beat all those guys. Here's the thing.
He was in the prime of his career at this time. He had just lost. Foreman had just lost to Ali and needed to get something going to regain some type of public presence. All right, so you're talking about a much younger George Foreman at this time. As you said, 53 years old? Nah, come on.
You're right about the fact that it's hard to imagine that he could have the kind of ferocity that Mike Tyson fought with that made him a legend. That said, that clip that we all saw, man, he still looks like he can turn it on. Now, that clip is out of context. There's nobody trying to hit him back. And we don't know if he could do that for 30 seconds or a minute or 3 rounds or 5 rounds. We don't know if he still can conjure up the anger that he seemed to fight with that scared the crap out of people. And we don't know if he's just playing with us right now and talking this game to make us think. But I'm with Rick. If Mike Tyson said he's coming back into the ring, there is absolutely no doubt that right this minute, Mike Tyson is the biggest draw in boxing by a mile. There is no other boxer alive that comes remotely close to being able to draw the kind of attention Mike Tyson would.
No, without a doubt. And here's the thing, that all those what ifs. Can he last a round? Can he last 3 rounds? What is he going to look like? What does he do when he gets punched? Is he going to bite somebody's ear off again? It's the what if factor. Is what, because he's been out of the ring since 2005, 15 years has gone by. The question is, what is he going to do? Can he still do the things that he used to do? The answer is going to be no. We want to see how close or how far he is from what he once was.
Here, against whom? Who is this against?
You know who it's against?
I'll go in the ring.
That's a big key here, because I think what we're looking at here is an exhibition of strength and science, as they used to describe wrestling, right? So what does that imply? Choreography, right? Which will allow you to perhaps, that was choreographed, what we saw, that sparring thing, because there was no resistance, right? It was all forward motion, nobody coming at him and throwing anything back at him. So my guess is, especially depending on how much money's involved, and that's another discussion we should have partway through this, is where the money goes.
Well, I
got a money's going to be a dance more than a bout, right? Yeah, so you might see that fury will be fake.
Your answer to, first of all, he says the money's going to charity, and the second thing about who does he fight against, about 15 years ago, maybe more than that, I don't know if anybody remembers, there was a promoter that brought Anna Kournikova to Hamilton for a tennis match, played at the Hamilton Tennis Club. And it was a big deal, and she was awful and everything. But at this time, she was ranked like 1900th in the world. And she wasn't that great to begin with. That's not why she was famous, for her tennis. And they had to scour the underbelly of the tennis world to find someone that Anna Kournikova would beat for sure. You can't bring her in and have her lose. She's the Globetrotters, not the Generals. And so that's the exact same thing that would happen with Mike Tyson. You would have to find somebody dumb enough but willing to take a payday, who will go in there and you think is going to be a surefire loser. And I can guarantee you, Steve, there are thousands of guys willing to line up to have their brains bashed in for a few $1 million who've never had a payday.
What I'm saying is going to be choreographed in some form or other. It's going to be choreographed to some degree, at least some understanding, if not a formal choreography.
Well, your choreography goes in, as you said, guys, what you're talking about there is in the setup of the matchup, right? This will be a very carefully, if this does happen, and please, let's hope it doesn't happen. This will be a very carefully choreographed selection of boxers of who he will go up against. At 53 years old, I cannot deny that people can't get into great shape. But you're looking at heavyweight. When he won the heavyweight championship, he weighed 220 pounds. The heavyweight boxing division is totally different than it was when he beat Trevor Berbick in '86. Look at Fury, and this is what disappoints me, because we're coming off one of the better fights in the heavyweight division, in Wilder and Fury, right? I feel like this division is on the rise right now. There is interest in this fight. The pay-per-view buys for that last fight, and I think this rematch or this third fight between Wilder and Fury will be through the roof.
Plus, there's Anthony Joshua on top of that, right?
Yes, and Joshua too. So he's the third element in this. Boxing is okay right now. It will never be what it was in '86 or what it was in the '70s with Ali, Norton, Frazier, Foreman. All right, we've already accepted that. But there's no way. The guy will have no stamina. He will have no ability to put together combinations. His footwork will be nothing like we used to see. We will not see the Mike Tyson that we all loved at that point back in the late '80s. This has to stop.
Bubba, your comment, though, that the heavyweight division and that boxing is okay, I take issue with that, because my argument would be on this one, the heavyweight division and boxing are okay among boxing fans, but among the general public, even Tyson Fury, who was just in the news and who has a great name, by the way, and is a wonderful character and is a pretty good fighter, if you went up to 100 people on the street right now and said, who is the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing, I would put money down that 95 of those people could not tell you the name of Tyson Fury. And if you mentioned it to them, some of them would go, oh yeah, okay, maybe I remember that name. But look, this is a sport that is doing okay among its fans. But if you want to draw in people who aren't boxing fans, Mike Tyson is your ticket. Like it or not,
Scott, and that's sad. But I'm going to argue against you a little bit there, Scott. You can't compare who the heavyweight champion is right now to what we remember it to be. Right? Wow. There was a time, and many of us, you look back to the likes of Rocky Marciano, Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Floyd Patterson, where the heavyweight champion arguably was the biggest person in sport, hands down. Baseball, football, all of it. It's changed. It will never go back to that. But the pay-per-view buys for that last Wilder and Fury fight would suggest to me that people are still interested in boxing. And it will never be what it was before. But if you put together two good boxers with some type of personality, people will buy the fight. It doesn't need to be a 53-year-old Mike Tyson, though.
Okay.
I think one of the more interesting things about this is they got to be very careful in terms of if it is a bout that a portion of the proceeds are going to go to charity, they have to be very careful to decide how much is going to charity. Because, yeah, there has to be a payday for these athletes and trainers and coaches. But, in the court of public perception, if not enough goes to charity, there'll be some backlash there.
I agree with that. And that's what I mentioned. Where's the money go? I mean, we know where a lot of it's going to go. Not all going to go to the fighters or to the charities. No. There's a lot of middle guy people in this, and that's always been one of the problems in boxing, right? So I want to go back to Scott's point, which I agree with, but I think it's reverse, that it's bad for boxing if you bring this along to enliven the division, because it enhances, if what Scott is saying is true, that the division doesn't draw enough. And I also agree with Bubba. One of the problems here, that they could have really built on that fight out of Vegas, because there was a lot of tangential interest in that, and a second one would have really helped, especially with a guy on the sidelines, Joshua, basically saying, "Hey, I deserve to be in this too." That usually gets something. A third guy in the stand saying, "Wait, I should be in there," creates a whole bunch of other stuff. They weren't able to build on that because of the pandemic. So if you bring back, and Scott, I believe, is somewhat right, that it still doesn't have that universal appeal, and it never will. If you bring back something that emphasizes that, how good is that for boxing? I think that'll serve the reverse process. It won't help the game. It'll actually go, hey, it's not very good right now.
If I'm correct, and I stand to be corrected on this, but I believe in the last, maybe ever, but certainly in the last 10 or 12 years, the biggest pay-per-view numbers in sports came from Conor McGregor and
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd Mayweather.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Which was not a boxing. I mean, it was a boxing match, but it was a circus. It was supposed to be a circus. It was a curiosity, and it was a guy that was not a boxer, but it could talk a great game and who had all kinds of interest outside the boxing world. That to me is Mike Tyson. And one thing we know about boxing and the boxing world and all the alphabet divisions and everything else, if there is a dollar to be found, a promoter will find it. There is, in my mind, absolutely zero chance that if Mike Tyson is remotely serious about doing this, whether it's 3 rounds or 5 rounds or 7 or a full fight, there is no question Mike Tyson will be doing this if he wants to, if he's interested really.
Well, he'll draw. He'll draw. What I'm saying is it good for the sport? If I'm the sport in general, I don't want it.
The other boxers may not love it.
No.
Unless you're the guy.
I think it's good for the sport. If it brings eyes to the TV or your tablet or wherever you're going to watch or consume this thing, I think it's good. I think more attention for boxing is good. I don't think anyone who steps into the ring with Tyson or himself are going to embarrass themselves. I mean, we can't compare to what they were. The guy's 53. He's not 23 anymore. He's not 33 anymore. There's going to be a lot of decay in his endurance, his skill set, the sharpness of how he throws punches. Bubba mentioned the footwork, all that kind of stuff. Expectations have to be lowered. It's the entertainment value that I think people are going to get, what they want out of it.
The only way I think this is really good generally for the sport is if you can introduce those 3 guys we just mentioned somehow into the bout, because it's going to have to be in front of no people, right? If they do it in the next little while, probably anytime in the next 6 months. And we might be heading to that way anyways on a lot of things. They've got to find a way to increase the circus so that it includes the alphabets, as Scott calls them. Now, there's really only two guys. I mean, Joshua holds 3 of the titles, and Tyson Fury, and which is basically a reverse of Furious Tyson, is the other one, right? And there's the third guy, and who Tyson Fury beat. So if I'm the WBO and I listen, and you listen to a show like this, I would say those guys are making arguments. Let's get involved with it ourselves. Let's find a way to sanction this thing as some kind of whatever it is, and so we can be part of what is clearly going to be a circus in one form or the other.
Bubba, you look dying to get in. Go.
I just think this is, we're talking about this being maybe bad for boxing or good for boxing. Maybe this is just a reflection on the sporting public, not the sport itself, that we would be suckered in to, or we have a curiosity or an interest to watch a 53-year-old man go in the ring against some tin can that's who we've never heard of. Maybe it's us, the sporting public, that's got the problem. Maybe not the sport.
We've had a problem for a long, long time in sports.
Yeah, we've always been like that. If Wayne Gretzky today said, hey, I'm coming back, we'd watch. We want to see how he stacks up against today's talent. We've always been like that as a sporting public, as a fan base. We want to see the old guy teach the young buck a new lesson, or see how he stacks up against the stars of today. I think it would be enthralling.
Or do we want to see the train wreck? Is that what we want to see?
Either one. And there's one more thing about Mike Tyson that to remember right now, and Rick mentioned it. Mike Tyson is 53. He is also a relatively, as much as Mike Tyson can be, a cuddly version of Mike Tyson. He's not the intimidating, terrifying guy that would come into the ring scowling with no robe, that looked ready to rip your thorax out with his bare hands, even in boxing gloves. And so I do wonder, as I said a moment ago, if he could. Mike Tyson, what his huge advantage was that guys were beaten mentally before the fight started most often.
This has got WWE written all over it.
It'll be interesting to see if this happens, if there's anything there. And as Bubba said too, last time he fought 15 years ago, he quit. He didn't come off the stool after the 6th round, and he said he had nothing left. Has he found something? His life seems to be happier now, certainly, than it was back then. Has he found something that makes it? There are very few fighters that come out of comfortable circumstances. And so I'm doubtful, but I guarantee you that, like everyone else, I would watch if this were to happen. What about you? Would you watch a Mike Tyson fight? Would you pay to watch a Mike Tyson fight? Comment below. Subscribe below. Get the little bell click there. Notify yourself when one of our videos comes out. Home Games is out 3 times a week. We would love to have ourselves popping up on your screen and you participating in the discussion. We will talk to you again soon.